Thomas D'Onofrio wrote an article on the website MormonThink.com titled Early American Influences on the Book of Mormon. In this article, D'Onofrio argues that the Book of Mormon is a work of 19th century American fiction. He supports this conclusion by identifying hundreds of words, phrases, and ideas that are found in both the Book of Mormon and American Revolutionary War literature available in Joseph Smith's day, but which are not found in the Bible. D'Onofrio states, "The Book of Mormon at first read does have a biblical sound. It is presented as a record of Hebrew origin. This would lend support to the book's defense. However, when it is compared to written material from the era of 1830, it sounds less and less biblical and more contemporary. Words, phrases, and concepts in the following study place the Book of Mormon squarely in the time of its production. The following comparisons will make a word-for-word translation an impossible position to defend." Here are some examples that he provides. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to take a closer look at the list of parallels D'Onofrio identifies. Some parallels that sound uniquely American that are not found in the Bible include phrases such as spirit of freedom, the cause of liberty, rights and privileges, ignominious death, and the description of using trenches as fortifications. Since these phrases are found in both the Book of Mormon and American Revolutionary War literature, such as Mercy Otis Warren's History of the Rise, Progress, and Termination of the American Revolution, but are not found in the Bible, then according to D'Onofrio, these phrases must be anachronistic. Therefore, the Book of Mormon must be a fake. Unfortunately, D'Onofrio's argument can be completely debunked by asking a simple question. Are these phrases identified by D'Onofrio also found in other 18th to 19th century English translations of ancient documents? Because if they are, then they are not anachronistic, and there is nothing unusual about them being found in the Book of Mormon. Not surprisingly, I was able to find nearly every single one of the supposedly anachronistic phrases identified by D'Onofrio in English translations of ancient documents. I wrote a blog post where I go through every one of the parallels identified by D'Onofrio, and I provide sources, so if you want to see that, see the link in the description box. However, for the Cliff Notes version, let's go through a few examples. The phrase "spirit of freedom" is found in both the Book of Mormon and Mercy Otis Warren's History of the American Revolutionary War, but it is not found in the Bible. However, this phrase is found in the English translation of the Dialogues of Plato. The phrase "cause of liberty" can be found in the complete works of Flavius Josephus, a famous Jewish historian. The phrase "rights and privileges" can be found again in Josephus. For the next example, both American revolutionaries and the Nephites referred to themselves as freemen. I admit that this does sound like a uniquely American thing to do. However, people identifying themselves as freemen is also recorded in Josephus, the History of the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides, and the Histories by Herodotus. For example, Josephus states he also left some of the horsemen called the freemen with Herod. In the next example, for some reason critics of the church are really hung up on the phrase ignominious death, and they try so hard to prove that it is an anachronistic phrase. Yet, in spite of the critics' insistence that this is a blatant example of the fictional nature of the Book of Mormon, I was able to find this phrase in at least 3 other English translations of ancient documents, including Josephus, Tacitus, and a collection of the written works of the Ante-Nicene Fathers. Now, this example is a little more compelling. D'Onofrio points out that both Moroni and George Washington have an experience where their enemies surrender and lay their weapons down at the feet of the victorious generals. This may sound like way too specific of an event for it to have occurred by chance to both Moroni and George Washington. Yet the same event also happens in the works of Flavius Josephus when he states, "Whereupon 3,000 of John's party left him immediately, who came to Josephus, and threw their arms down at his feet." The last parallel I want to look at is using ditches, walls of dirt, and pickets as fortifications. Again, what are the chances that both the Nephites and the American revolutionaries used the same fortification tactics? But it turns out that civilizations all over the world have been using such tactics for thousands of years. One example is found in the History of the Peloponnesian War, where Thucydides states, "A trench was dug all around the temple and the consecrated ground, and the earth thrown up from the excavation was made to do duty as a wall, in which stakes were also planted, together with stones and bricks pulled down from the houses near." So those are just a few examples. As I said before, there are hundreds of phrases that D'Onofrio identifies, which I have responded to individually with sources, so if you would like the comprehensive list, see my blog post with the link in the description below. I was not able to find every single phrase, but I probably could if I put more time into it, but honestly I have other stuff to do and I have already spent way too much time on this as it is. This method that I used to debunk D'Onofrio's argument can be used to debunk other arguments made by critics of the church as well. A very common tactic for critics of the church to use is to find books, sermons, newspapers, or any written literature which has any similarity to the Book of Mormon and try to prove that Joseph Smith was somehow influenced by this literature, as if it is some big coincidence that cannot be explained. If one takes the time to see if similar events happened in the past, then that will go a long way into debunking those arguments.